Chapter 1, Golden Boy. I used to think silence meant safety. If I kept my head down, if I aced every test, if I made myself small and polite and forgettable, I'd survive high school without falling apart. People don't hit what they don't notice. That was the theory anyway. I was wrong. "Hey, honor student," someone muttered behind me. I didn't turn around, just kept walking. Locker row smelled like sweat and axe and rotting fruit. My grip on my bag strap tightened. A hand smacked the back of my head. Not hard, not enough to bruise, just enough to say you're ours. They laughed. I didn't flinch. Not anymore. Still ignoring us, huh? Rude. Just keep walking, Liam. Don't react. Don't give them anything. Someone shoved my shoulder. My books slipped a little under my arm. I caught them before they hit the ground. Then, fucking robot. More laughter. I made it to my locker without looking up. I didn't need to see their faces. I could tell who it was by the sounds of their shoes, the pitch of their voices. Alex was the loud one. Brandon liked to get close. Cal never said anything, he just watched. I'd stopped expecting teachers to intervene a long time ago. They saw me the way I trained them to see me. Well-behaved. High-achieving. Fine. They didn't know about the tension headaches, or the panic attacks I swallowed during math class, or how I sometimes stayed in the bathroom during lunch just to breathe. No one knew anything. That was the point. I opened my locker with practiced movements, careful not to show the tremble in my fingers. I had a bruise forming under my sleeve, right wrist, shaped like someone's grip. It would fade in a few days. They always did. I lived in the in-between, not hurt enough to matter, not loud enough to be helped. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a fighter. I was maintenance. Fix the grades. Fix the lies. Fix the face in the mirror. Third period was calculus. My safe zone. Numbers didn't ask questions. Equations didn't laugh when you winced opening your locker. Mr. Han droned about derivatives. I copied notes I already understood, my handwriting mechanical. Across the aisle, Mia tapped her pen against her chin, chewing the cap. Pretty. Smart. She'd never spoken to me. I didn't mind. I wasn't someone worth noticing. Lunch. The worst part of the day. I stood in line with my tray, eyes on the floor. I never sat with anyone. There were unspoken rules in our school. People like me ate alone, unless they were trying to get noticed, and getting noticed meant trouble. Tray. Water. Rice. Bland meat. Apple. All perfectly balanced. All perfectly avoidable. I turned to scan the tables, and that's when everything changed. A crash. Shouting. A chair flew across the cafeteria. Someone was screaming. No growling. Fists slamming. Tables flipping. I saw a blur of motion. Someone tall, in a black hoodie, fist covered in blood. 3 guys down on the floor. One of them was Brandon. The other 2 I didn't recognize. Fucking cowards. The guy hissed, panting, fists still clenched like he wasn't finished. Silence rippled across the room. The whole cafeteria froze. Then a voice from the staff hallway. "HOI? Why? Break it up." 2 teachers rushed in. But the fight was already over. The new guy just stood there, chest rising and falling like he hadn't even broken a sweat. I looked at him, and for the first time in weeks he looked back. His eyes locked on mine. Sharp, unblinking, and somehow even across the room he saw it. His gaze dropped to my sleeve, my wrist. He saw the bruise, and he smiled, just a little, like he'd found something worth breaking. Chapter 2. Riot in the hall. Monday started like every other. Gray sky, cold hallway, and the smell of burnt coffee from the teacher's lounge creeping into everything. I didn't sleep the night before. The fight replayed in my head. Blood, noise, silence. And him, the new guy. He didn't have a name yesterday. Just presence. Just violence. Like a storm crashing into a glass house. I'd seen fights before, but nothing like that. He didn't just fight, he dismantled. And then he looked at me. I pulled my sleeve down tighter as I walked to my locker. But the bruise still throbbed, like it remembered being seen. He had a name by third period. Riven Lee. Transfer student. Expelled from 2 schools. Rumors flew like paper shrapnel. Gang affiliation, juvie, knives in his backpack. No one could confirm anything, but it didn't matter. Fear doesn't need proof. By lunch, people gave him a 3-foot radius. Like he was radioactive. Me? I tried to stay invisible. That was my one skill. But invisibility doesn't work if someone decides to see you. After school, I lingered in the library until the janitor kicked me out. Less time in the halls meant fewer chances of running into. Hey! I froze. He was leaning against the row of lockers like he'd been waiting. Like he knew where I'd be. Hood down, eyes sharp, a scratch healing on his cheek. Riven. Liam Kim, right? He said. My throat tightened. Yeah. Top of the class. Perfect scores. Parents probably worship the ground you walk on. His voice was casual, almost bored. But his eyes didn't match. There was something hungry in them. Focused. I didn't answer. He stepped forward, closing the distance between us. You're not gonna ask how I know your name? I figured you'd looked at the honor roll, I muttered. He laughed once. You think I care about grades? Then his gaze dropped to my wrist. I felt it before he even moved. The way he tilted his head, the way his eyes narrowed. He remembers. You hide it better than most, he said quietly. My stomach flipped. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. He reached out. Not fast, not aggressive. Just slow enough to let me see it coming. His fingers brushed my sleeve. I flinched before he even touched me. Riven's smile curled, but it wasn't mean. It was worse. It was knowing. That's what I thought, he murmured. The next day it happened again. And again. Between classes. After school. In the stairwell. At the vending machine. He didn't touch me again, not yet. But he was there. Everywhere. People stopped messing with me almost instantly. Kyle wouldn't even look in my direction. Brandon changed hallways. Alex disappeared completely. The relief was confusing. I should have felt safer. But instead I felt watched. Like a mouse protected by a wolf. It was Thursday when things escalated. I was cornered near the gym by a sophomore with a chip on his shoulder. I didn't even know his name. He shoved me once. Twice. Called me a bitch for bumping into him in the hallway. I didn't fight back. I never did. But someone else did. The kid didn't even see the punch coming. 1 second he was yelling in my face, and the next he was on the floor, gasping and holding his stomach like his ribs had caved in. Riven stood over him, expression flat. Not angry, not smug, just done. No one touches him, Riven said. His voice was soft, but it carried. The hallway went still. I stood frozen. Part of me wanted to thank him. Part of me wanted to run. He turned to me, grabbed my collar, and yanked me in close. Understand something, they don't touch what's mine, he said, eyes burning into mine. My brain short-circuited. Mine? I'm not, I started. But he cut me off with a look. Not angry, not threatening, just final. It wasn't a request. He let go and walked away like nothing had happened. I stood there, heart pounding, my collar still warm from his grip. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours, waiting for sleep that never came. Chapter 3, Mine to Break. I used to wish someone would step in. Some fantasy where a teacher saw the bruises, or a stranger grabbed my bullies by the collar and made them pay. I used to think that would fix everything. I don't wish that anymore, because someone did step in. And it didn't fix me. It just broke me differently. It started in the locker room. Gym class. Worst hour of the day. The teacher was outside yelling at someone. The rest of us were unsupervised, half-dressed and restless. I was tying my shoelaces when the first sock hit my face. Yo, Kim, you gonna let that new freak protect you forever? Someone sneered. I kept my eyes on the floor. Another voice, Brandon probably. Maybe he likes being owned. Laughter. Sharp, fast, stupid. Then hands. Rough, shoving me sideways. I caught myself against the locker, but my shoulder cracked hard. Say something, someone hissed. I didn't. My mouth was dry. My hands were fists. Not to fight, just to stop the shaking. Then the locker next to me banged open, slammed hard enough to echo. Silence. A shadow cut across the floor. Heavy boots. Black hoodie. Riven. No warning. No speech. No time. He slammed Brandon against the lockers so hard the metal warped. The room exploded into chaos. Guys scattering, shouting, grabbing shirts, backing up like they'd seen a ghost. But Riven didn't care. His hand was around Brandon's throat. Not tight, not choking. Just holding him there like a pinned bug. "You put hands on him?" Riven asked calmly. Brandon choked. We were just... Wrong answer. Riven punched him. Once, to the gut. Brandon dropped like a bag of bones. Everyone froze. I was still sitting on the bench, half-laced shoes, watching like it wasn't real. Like this wasn't happening to me. Riven turned. His eyes met mine. And then he walked over. I didn't move. Couldn't. He crouched down in front of me. Too close, his face unreadable. I could smell blood on his knuckles. Sweat. Soap. Something sharp underneath it all. "You good?" he asked. I nodded, but my body betrayed me. My hands were shaking. He stared at them, then at me. Then his hand shot out, fist tight in my shirt collar. Pulled me forward until my face was inches from his. "They don't touch what's mine, got it?" he said again, slower this time. I swallowed. I wanted to say no. Wanted to tell him I wasn't his anything. But I couldn't get the words out. So I just nodded again. He held my gaze for a second longer, then released me. I gasped without meaning to. He stood up and walked out of the locker room like he hadn't just assaulted someone. The others stayed far away from me after that. They whispered, but they didn't touch. After school, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone. No texts, no calls, no homework I hadn't already finished 3 days ago. The house was quiet. Mom was at work. Dad was probably still in traffic. They hadn't noticed the bruises yet. I took off my hoodie and looked in the mirror. There was a faint mark where Riven had grabbed my collar. Just a little red. My reflection stared back, hollow-eyed. They don't touch what's mine. The worst part wasn't what he said. The worst part was how it felt to hear it. Like safety. Like being chosen. Like being claimed. And I hated that it felt better than being ignored. Chapter 4. Protection isn't free. Riven didn't ask to be part of my life. He just took up space in it, loud, brutal, constant. Like gravity. He started showing up in places he shouldn't be. My hallway. My lunch table. Outside my math class like it was coincidence. It wasn't. I tried to ignore it at first. Pretend it didn't matter. Pretend I still had a choice. But people looked at me differently now. Not like prey. Like property. It was Friday. Overcast sky. Wind like it was trying to peel the walls off the building. I hadn't spoken more than 5 words all day. Perfect GPA, perfect silence. I was leaving the science wing when I saw him. Leaning against the lockers like he lived there. Hoodie. Headphones around his neck. Eyes already on me. He didn't smile. "Walk with me," he said. Not a question. I hesitated for half a second too long. He pushed off the wall and stepped closer. "You deaf now?" I shook my head. "Then let's go." So I followed. We ended up behind the old gym building, the part the janitors always forgot about. It smelled like mold and rust. Riven sat on the low wall and lit a cigarette. I didn't smoke. I didn't even cough. I just stood there. "You're quiet today," he said. "I'm always quiet." He looked at me sideways. Fair. Smoke curled around his face. His lip was busted, barely healed. The bruise on his jaw had turned yellow at the edges. He didn't hide any of it. He watched me like he was waiting for something. I said nothing. You know, most people say thank you when someone kicks the shit out of their problems. He said slowly. I flinched. His gaze sharpened. "You gonna say it?" I looked down at my shoes. "Thanks. Didn't sound like you meant it. I didn't ask for your help." He stood up so fast I took a step back. "You think this is optional? You think I did it for fun?" he asked, voice low. "I don't know why you did it. You don't even know me." I snapped. Silence. Thick. Pressing. Then, I don't need to know you to see what you are. I swallowed hard. What am I, then? He stepped closer. One hand reached out, just brushed my hoodie zipper. Not pulling, just there. Breakable. I felt the word like a slap. He leaned in close enough to whisper. And I like broken things. From that day on, he was always there. He didn't ask. He didn't explain. He just appeared. At my locker. Behind me in the cafeteria. Sitting too close on the bleachers. Watching. And I let him. Not because I wanted him there. But because the second he stopped, I knew the wolves would come back. And they were worse when they were patient. Chapter 5. Pressure points. I didn't know how to breathe anymore. Not in a metaphorical way. I mean it literally. My chest would tighten without warning. My throat would close like it had something to say but couldn't. My vision would blur at the edges. Like the world was too bright and too loud and too fast all at once. And through it all, I still smiled in the halls. I still raised my hand in class. I still said, I'm fine every time someone asked. Because that was the job. Golden boy. No cracks allowed. It started getting worse the second week. Headaches behind my eyes. Cold sweats in the middle of lectures. Dreams I couldn't remember, but always woke from with a clenched jaw and soaked sheets. I stopped eating lunch. I told my mom I was too busy for dinner. Even water made my stomach feel like glass. Tuesday, third period, I had a full-blown panic attack during physics. 1 second I was copying notes, the next the words stopped making sense. Letters floating. Desk shrinking. Everything too close. My heart kicked into overdrive. Breathe. Just breathe. Come on. Couldn't. I raised my hand halfway, but my vision blacked out around the corners and no one noticed. I stumbled out of class and into the stairwell, collapsed against the wall behind the emergency exit door, and wrapped my arms around my knees. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I couldn't stop shaking. That's where Riven found me. I don't know how long he'd been there. I didn't hear the door open. He just was. He looked down at me, expression unreadable. Then he crouched. Hey, he said low, not rough, not mocking, just present. I couldn't speak, couldn't even lift my head. Liam, he said again, firmer, closer. I managed to glance up. He was watching me carefully, like something fragile and unfamiliar. Not pity, not even concern, just intensity. He reached out, slowly, like I was a skittish animal. His fingers pressed under my chin, lifted my face. I flinched, but I didn't pull away. You're spiraling, he said, like it was fact, not judgment. I tried to breathe again, came out ragged and shallow. Then he did something I didn't expect. He touched me, hands on either side of my face. Not soft but not violent. His thumbs anchored under my jaw, forcing my eyes to stay on his. Focus, breathe when I tell you, he said. Couldn't. Try in. Right now. He ordered. I did. In. I sucked in a shaky breath. Out. My chest rattled. In. It went on like that. Him counting. Me gasping. The panic didn't vanish, but something shifted. Like gravity realigning under me. His hands were still on my face. Firm. Warm. There. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear hit his thumb. He didn't flinch. He just kept looking at me, like I wasn't disgusting, like I wasn't weak. When I finally slumped forward, exhausted, he caught me before I hit the floor. Arms wrapped around my shoulders, steady and tight. I didn't know what to do with that kind of closeness, so I didn't do anything. I just let him hold me. Later, when my breathing was normal again and the shaking had dulled to a quiet hum, I sat on the cold floor and stared at the wall. Riven lit a cigarette. You ever tell anyone? He asked. About what? This. I shook my head. He didn't say anything for a while, just leaned back and smoked like the air didn't weigh 1,000 pounds. Then he said, You don't have to be okay around me. The words hit harder than they should have. I didn't respond, because I didn't know what was worse, pretending around everyone, or not knowing who I was without the pretending. That night, in bed, I kept hearing his voice. I copied it under my breath until sleep took me, and I hated it, but I also needed it. and I didn't know how to undo that. Chapter 6. First obedience. I didn't want to belong to anyone, but saying no was starting to feel impossible. Not because I agreed with him, not because I trusted him, because I was tired. Tired in a way that didn't touch my body, just hollowed me out from the inside, like everything that used to hold me up had quietly collapsed. And Riven? He filled that silence. Loud, demanding, unavoidable. It started on a Wednesday. We were behind the school again, near the rusted-out storage sheds where no one bothered to patrol. He was leaned against a brick wall, flicking a lighter open and shut, over and over, not even lighting it. "You're not going to class," he said without looking at me. "I have a test. You're skipping it." I hesitated. "I can't." He looked up, his eyes locked on mine. Slow, patient, dangerous. "You can. And you will." My mouth opened. Nothing came out. I checked the time. Third period. Trig. I couldn't afford a zero, but I also couldn't move, so I stayed. Riven nodded once like it confirmed something he already believed. He took me to the edge of the woods behind the school, just past the broken chain-link fence where no cameras reached. It smelled like damp leaves and old smoke. He sat on the ground, gestured for me to do the same. I sat. "That test, you'd pass it in your sleep," he said casually. I looked at him. "That's not the point, isn't it?" He leaned closer. "You've been running on autopilot for years. Schedules, rules, grades, parents, teachers. You think any of that's kept you safe?" I didn't answer, because I couldn't lie, and I didn't want to tell the truth. He leaned in closer. "Try something new, Obey," he said. Kept happening. Small things at first. "Don't go home yet. Don't answer that call. Lie to your teacher." Each one chipped away at something I thought was essential. Like he was testing how much of me was still mine. And every time I obeyed, I told myself it's temporary. Just this once. But I was lying. Because each time I did what he said, it got easier. And he knew it. "Get on your knees." He said it on a Friday. Empty classroom. After hours. No one else around. I stared at him. "Why?" "Because I told you to." My breath caught. "That's not a reason." Riven stepped forward. His hand brushed my shoulder, then slid to the back of my neck. He didn't push. He didn't squeeze. He just waited. And that made it worse. "I can't," I whispered. "You can." My knees hit the tile before I realized I'd moved. He smiled, just a flicker. Not kind. Not triumphant. Interested. Like watching an experiment go exactly as expected. "See? Easy," he said. I stared at the floor. My palms were flat on my thighs. My face burned. I hated him. But more than that, I hated the part of me that didn't resist. That night, I sat in the shower until the water ran cold. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from fear. From adrenaline. From shame. From something I couldn't name. The next day, he walked beside me between classes like nothing had changed. Like it was normal. Like I was normal. And when we passed a group of guys who used to push me into lockers, they stepped aside without a word. Riven didn't even look at them. But his hand brushed mine. Barely a touch. And I didn't pull away. That was the first time I realized obedience wasn't always forced. Sometimes it was chosen. Not because it felt right, but because it was easier than surviving alone. Chapter 7. Bound by bruises. I thought if I stayed away from him, things would stop. The confusion, the pressure, the part of me that kept folding every time he said my name. I thought space would help me think. I was wrong. I skipped school the next day. No warning. No text. I just didn't go. I told my mom I was sick. She didn't look up from her coffee. She didn't ask questions. She never did. I stayed in bed, curled under a blanket that felt too light, staring at the wall until the sun moved. I didn't eat. I didn't scroll. I didn't breathe right. But at least he wasn't there. No commands. No tests. No heat behind my ear whispering obey. Still, I kept checking my phone like it was going to explode. Didn't. But something in me did. Day 2 I came back to school. The hallway felt off. Too quiet. People stared when I passed. Not the usual way, this was sharper, like I'd broken a rule I didn't know existed. I made it to my locker, and then I felt it. That pressure behind me. The kind that wrapped around your spine and said run, even before your brain caught up. I turned. Riven stood there. No expression. No smile. Just heat. His jaw clenched once before he moved. Fast. Faster than I expected. He slammed me against the lockers. Hard. The impact knocked the breath out of my lungs. My head hit metal. Pain bloomed behind my eyes. And then his hand. At my throat. Not crushing. Not quite. Just there. Enough to stop me from speaking. Enough to tell me he could if he wanted to. His voice was low. Steady. Dead serious. Where the fuck were you? I couldn't answer. His fingers pressed tighter. Not choking, just reminding. You disappear on me now? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. He leaned in. Face inches from mine. Eyes wild and glassy and hurt. You don't get to vanish, not from me, he whispered. My pulse pounded under his hand. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shove him off me and run and never stop running. But I didn't. Couldn't. Because something in his eyes cracked. And it looked just like mine. Broken. Quietly begging. For something he couldn't name. He let go. I slid down the lockers and landed hard on the floor. My legs didn't work right. My chest stung with shallow breaths. He looked down at me like he didn't know what he'd just done. Then he turned and walked away without a word. That night, I cried for the first time in months. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just silently, under my blanket, with my phone off and my hands clenched so tight they ached. I kept hearing his voice. You don't get to vanish. Like I was something he'd found in the dark and wasn't willing to lose. Not because he loved me, because he owned me. And part of me didn't hate it. Part of me was just relieved he noticed I was gone. And I didn't know what that said about me. The next morning I wore long sleeves, even though it was too hot for it. Even though the mark on my neck was barely visible. Even though no one asked. Because that's what you do when someone touches you like a secret. You hide it. Even from yourself. Chapter 8. The first touch. It happened after school. The building was almost empty. Halls echoing with the last slams of lockers. Teachers locking up. Footsteps fading. I should have gone home. I almost did. But I lingered. Like always. Like I was waiting for something I didn't want. I found him outside the east stairwell. He didn't say hi. He never did. Just stood there. Hoodie half-zipped. Eyes unreadable. Hands in his pockets like he was keeping something in, or holding something back. Come here, he said. Not loud. Not soft. Just final. I didn't move. So he crossed the distance for me. We stood in the corner of the stairwell, tucked behind the door where no one looked. He stared down at me for a long time. Not talking. Not touching. Just watching. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. You've been quiet, he said finally. I'm always quiet. This is different. I looked away. You want me to talk? No. Then his hand was in my hair. I froze. Not yanking. Not pulling. Just resting. Fingers curling at the nape of my neck. My throat went dry. What are you doing? I asked. He didn't answer. His hand tightened barely. Just enough to tilt my face up. Look at me. I didn't want to, but I did. He kissed me. No warning. No build-up. No softness. It was sharp. Uninvited. Teeth caught my lip. His grip tightened when I flinched. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't romantic. It was Riven. Fast. Demanding. Like taking a drag off something that burns going down. My back hit the wall. His body pressed closer. Heat and weight and hunger. Not lust exactly, something darker. Possession. Frustration. A test. I didn't fight it. But I didn't want it either. I just let it happen. Because saying no felt more dangerous than letting it end. When he pulled away, I was breathless. Not from the kiss. From the silence that followed. He looked at me like he was searching for something under my skin. Like he was waiting for me to break. But I didn't. I just stood there, staring at the wall. Face burning. hands clenched at my sides. He reached out, brushed a thumb under my bottom lip. There was blood. I didn't even notice when it split. You didn't hate it, he said. I didn't want it. He tilted his head. That's not the same thing. He left me standing there, alone, shame crawling across my skin like oil. I didn't cry. Not then. I waited until I got home. Waited until my door was locked. Waited until the shower drowned out the sound. Then I let go. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours. Replay after replay. His hand in my hair. The way he said, you didn't hate it. I did. I hated everything about it. Except the part of me that didn't. And that's what killed me. Because if I couldn't even trust my own body to hate him, what was left of me? Chapter 9. Confession as Control. There's a point where silence stops being a shield. When it starts turning inward, slicing from the inside out. That's where I was. Tired of pretending. Too hollow to keep my mouth shut. And Riven knew it. He was just waiting for me to break. It was raining that day. The kind of cold drizzle that soaked through your sleeves and left you shaking. We were under the stairwell again. Our usual spot. Out of sight. Out of reach. I was sitting on the floor, knees drawn up, soaked to the bone. Riven stood over me, lighting a cigarette with one hand and watching me like I was about to say something important. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to feel. But the words were rotting inside me. And he kept asking. What happened to you? He said. I didn't answer. You weren't always like this. He crouched beside me, ash flicking from his cigarette, eyes narrowing. You had a break somewhere. Tell me where. I laughed under my breath. Ugly and bitter. Is that it? You want to play therapist now? I asked. No, therapists fix people, he said. And you don't. He tilted his head. I don't fix broken things. I keep them. I should have left. I should have told him to fuck off. But I didn't, because his voice was calm, and his gaze was steady. And for once someone was asking, not because they cared, but because they wanted to know. And I was too tired to hold it anymore. My dad's barely home, I said. Came out flat. He works late. He travels. Sometimes I forget what he looks like. Riven didn't blink. My mom pretends I'm perfect. Pretends everything's normal. When she sees the bruises, she just sighs. Says boys will be boys. Tells me to study harder. I paused. The words tasted like rust. And when I told a teacher last year, she looked right at me and said, Liam, you're not the type of kid that gets bullied. I laughed again. Quieter. Guess I'm too clean for pity. Riven didn't speak for a long time. Then, what about friends? I shook my head. People don't like mirrors that show them what they aren't. And what are you? Empty. That word clung to the air like smoke. He leaned in. You're not empty. You're full of pain. I looked away. Same thing. After that, he made me talk more. Every day, another piece. How I used to fake fevers to avoid gym. How I hadn't eaten lunch at a table with anyone in 2 years. How I used to stay up until 3 a.m. just scrolling, staring at people who seemed realer than I ever felt. He never judged. He just listened. And then he used it. You hate yourself, he said one afternoon. We were sitting on the floor again, my back against the wall, his knee brushing mine. Too close. You crave punishment. I stared at the ground. No. He grabbed my chin, turned my face to his. You don't want affection. You want control. You want someone to tell you what to do so you don't have to make choices. I swallowed. You're wrong. He smiled. I'm right. He let go, but I still felt his hand. Every time you obey me, it makes you feel real, doesn't it? I didn't answer. He leaned in, voice a whisper against my ear. You hate how much you need me. He was right. I did hate it, but I also needed it. Because when he was there, the numbness lifted. When he ordered me around, I didn't have to think. When he made me confess, I felt seen. Like all the ugly parts of me finally had a place to rot out loud. And it made me sick. That night, I sat on my bed and stared at the ceiling. The room was quiet, too clean, too empty. I grabbed my phone, typed out a message, deleted it, Typed again. Why do you want me? He replied 2 minutes later. Because you're mine. Chapter 10. A new kind of pain. There are two kinds of pain. The kind that happens to you, and the kind you blame yourself for. I didn't know which one this was. Not yet. It was a Thursday, after school. The halls were mostly empty. Wet footprints on tile. Buzzing lights. That hollow feeling of being somewhere too long after it's supposed to be safe. He told me to follow him. I didn't ask where. I didn't ask why. I just went. Because that's what I did now. It was an empty classroom. No windows. Fluorescents buzzing above like they were judging me. He closed the door behind us and locked it. That sound, click, landed in my spine. He leaned against the teacher's desk and looked at me like I was already halfway undressed. I shifted my weight. My palms felt slick. What are we doing? I asked. He smiled. Just a little. We're seeing what you can take. He reached for me, slow but not gentle. I stepped back. Wait. He didn't stop. Riven, You don't mean it, he said. His hand found my jaw, then my shoulder, then slid down my chest. I do, I said. I whispered. His mouth was on mine before the sentence could finish. Hard. Bruising. Possessive. I froze. My brain screamed move. Push him off. Say something louder. But my body did what it always did. It obeyed. His hands moved lower. Fingers on my skin where they didn't belong. Touching places I hadn't shown anyone. Places I didn't want to be seen. I gasped. Tried to turn my head. He held it in place. Sure, you're fine, he whispered. I wasn't. But I stopped resisting. Because part of me thought it would end faster if I just disappeared inside. So I did. After I sat on the floor. Back against the desk. Shirt rumpled. Mouth swollen. He sat beside me. Like nothing had happened. Like we just studied too hard. His arm draped over my shoulders. I didn't flinch. That scared me most. That I didn't flinch. You okay? He asked after a minute. I nodded. It was automatic. False. But easier than the truth. He pulled me closer. Pressed a kiss into my hair like he owned the moment. Like he hadn't just made me a stranger to my own body. You're stronger than you think, he murmured. I didn't feel strong. I felt used. Not violently, just thoroughly. Like a page someone scribbled on too hard and then tried to erase. That night, I sat in the shower for over an hour. I didn't cry. I didn't scrub. I just sat there, knees pulled to my chest, letting the water run cold. I wanted to feel something clean, but everything felt wrong. Inside, outside, all of it. In bed, I stared at the ceiling until sunrise. My body felt too heavy to move. My mind kept replaying it. Not the moment he touched me. The moment I stopped saying no. That's what haunted me. Not the pain. The silence. Chapter 11. Red marks. White lies. I started wearing turtlenecks. Even when it was warm. Even when it made me sweat through first period. Because the bruises weren't where people could pretend anymore. They were higher now. Throat. Collarbone. The curve of my neck where a hand had gripped too hard or a mouth had lingered too long. Fingerprints turned purple. Then yellow. My mirror became an enemy. But hiding it was easier than explaining it. And lying came easier than I expected. Is that a rash? My English teacher squinted at my neck during roll call. I pulled at my collar. Mosquito bite. She didn't push. No one ever really did. At home, I stopped making eye contact at dinner. My mom commented once. You're dressing different lately. I mumbled something about the weather. She accepted it like she accepted everything. Distracted and half listening. My dad didn't look up from his phone. I could have been bleeding out in front of them, and they'd still ask if I'd finished my homework. In the counselor's office, I smiled too easily. Still feeling anxious? She asked, pen poised. A little, but better, I said. She nodded like that meant something. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, someone touches me like I belong to him and I don't know how to stop it. I let him, and I hate it, and I need it, and I don't know which of those things makes me more fucked up. But I said nothing, because if I said it out loud, it would be real. He noticed the silence. Of course he did. "You're shutting down again," Riven said one afternoon, trailing behind me as we cut through the side courtyard. "Don't make me pull you out of it." I kept walking. He grabbed my arm, yanked me back behind the old gym. No one around. No cameras. I didn't fight it. His hand slipped under my collar, brushed a mark on my neck like he was checking his signature. "You still wearing those shirts because of me?" he asked. I didn't answer. He smiled. "You don't have to hide it. I like seeing you marked up." I stared at the wall behind him. "That's not why I wear them," I said. "Then why?" "So no one asks questions I'm not ready to lie about." He paused, then laughed under his breath. "You're getting good at this." I didn't know if that was supposed to be a compliment or a warning. Later, in the stairwell, he tugged me down beside him, made me rest against his chest. His fingers threaded into my hair, stroking, gentle for once. "You look tired," he said. I was. He leaned closer, whispered into the space between my ear and throat. "I could make it worse. Or better." I didn't move. His hand gripped the back of my neck. Not tight, just possessive, like a collar. "You choose," he murmured. But we both knew I wouldn't choose anything. I never did. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror again, pulled down the turtleneck, examined what was left. Teeth marks, faint, fingertip bruises, a scrape across my ribs from the last time I said no and he didn't believe me. I stared at my own reflection until it stopped looking like a person, until it looked like something he'd made. And the worst part? It made sense. Because if I didn't belong to him, then who did I belong to? Chapter 12. Shatter Point. Some things don't break clean. They crack first. Hairline fractures no one sees. Tired eyes. Lost appetite. Shaky hands under desks. I kept it hidden. That was my skill. My pride. But everything has a limit. And I reached mine during third period. It started with the lights. Too bright. Buzzing. Then the pen tapping behind me. Then the way my shirt clung to my back. Then the fact that I hadn't slept in 2 days and the air in the classroom felt like it was made of static. Then breathing stopped making sense. My heart was sprinting, but I was sitting still. My vision tunneled. Everything spun sideways. And my hands. God. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Liam." The teacher's voice came from somewhere far away. My fingers slipped off my desk. "Liam, are you?" I stood up. Fast. Too fast. The chair screeched backward. I didn't say anything. I just walked out. I didn't make it far. Collapsed against the wall just past the lockers, trying to remember what air felt like. Chest tight. Face clammy. Knees weak. I was going to pass out. Or throw up. Or disappear. Maybe all three. "Hey. Hey." His voice hit me like a hand. Riven. Of course. I didn't ask how he found me. I didn't ask why he wasn't in class. He was just there. Because he always was when I fell apart. And maybe that's why I hated him so much. He grabbed my arm. Pulled me fast down the hall. "Stop. Shut up." Couldn't fight him. Could barely stand. We ducked into an empty classroom. He locked the door behind us. Drew the blinds. Dragged me toward the back wall. "Sit." I collapsed more than sat. My breathing was still wrecked. Shallow, rapid, useless. He crouched in front of me. Slapped my cheek. Not hard, but enough to startle. "Focus." "I can't." "Yes, you can." His hands were on my face. Steady. Controlling. "You're not dying. It just feels like it." I shook my head. "It's not just. I can't. I don't." "Liam." His voice cut through the noise. "Look at me." I did. He leaned in, and he kissed me. Hard. Not gentle. Not soft. Not kind. Just control. Just silence. Just his way of making the world stop spinning. My head hit the wall behind me. He didn't stop. His hand slid to my throat. Not squeezing. Just resting. And I let him. Because it was easier than falling apart alone. When he pulled back, my lips were raw. My breathing had slowed. But not from peace. From surrender. He pressed his forehead to mine. "You need me, say it." he whispered. I didn't speak. His grip tightened. Say it. I need you, I said. The words didn't taste like truth. They tasted like survival. I don't remember the rest of the day. I went to class. Or maybe I didn't. The hours passed in a blur of static and footsteps and white noise. No one asked if I was okay. And even if they did, I wouldn't have answered. Because I wasn't sure if I was anymore. That night, I lay in bed with the lights off. Chapter 13. Obsession isn't love. I stopped recognizing myself. Not suddenly. Not like looking in a mirror and screaming. It was slower than that. Subtle. Like watching color drain from a photo one shade at a time. Until all that was left was grayscale. And Riven. I stared at myself a lot. In the bathroom before school. After showers. At the water-streaked mirror above the sink in the locker room. Looking for what changed. It wasn't the bruises. It wasn't the split lip or the fading grip marks on my arms. It was my eyes. They looked hollow. Not tired. Not sad. Just gone. You're not eating again, he said one morning. He'd found me on the back stairs before first period. Sitting alone. Picking at a protein bar I hadn't even unwrapped. Not hungry. He took it from my hand. Tossed it in his bag like I didn't deserve the choice. You're too thin, you're going to snap, he muttered. I stared at the floor. Maybe that's the point. He stopped, then grabbed my chin, hard, and forced my head up. Don't say shit like that. Why not? Because I fucking care. The words hit me like a punch. Not because they were soft. Because they weren't. He didn't say it gently. He didn't mean it gently. He said it like a threat. I wanted to ask, is this what care looks like? Hands around my throat. Lips I didn't ask for. Control I never agreed to. But I didn't say it. Because part of me was afraid of the answer. And the other part already knew. He followed me everywhere now. Shadowed me between classes. Waited outside the bathroom. Showed up behind me in the lunch line and took food off my tray like he owned it. Everyone saw. No one said a word. Not to me. Not to him. Because they were scared. Or maybe they thought I liked it. I didn't even know the difference anymore. I don't think this is normal, I said once. It was after school. We were in his room. His place was always dim. Curtains drawn. Walls covered in band posters and ripped-out notebook pages full of things that looked like lyrics or threats. He was lying on his bed. I was sitting on the floor, back against his dresser. His foot nudged my side. Define normal. Not this. He sat up. You mean the way I touch you? I said nothing. You mean the way you let me? Still silence. He leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. You think if it really bothered you, you wouldn't have left by now? That was the trick. I had tried to leave, and he'd broken me for it. Now I stayed. Not because I wanted to, because staying was quieter than running. I started watching couples at school. Real ones. Hand-holding in the courtyard. Head on a shoulder in the library. Kisses that looked soft, not strategic. Eyes that held safety instead of surveillance. And I realized something. What Riven and I had wasn't love. It was need. It was fear. It was chemical. A drug I didn't ask for, but couldn't quit. That night, I laid in bed and stared at the ceiling like it had answers. My phone buzzed on the pillow next to me. You still mine? I stared at the screen. Didn't answer. He sent another. Say it. I typed. Paused. Typed again. Yes. Then turned off my phone and laid there in the dark. Feeling nothing. Not guilt. Not hate. Not comfort. Just emptiness. And it was louder than anything he ever said. Chapter 14. The chokehold. I left without telling him. No note. No goodbye. No excuse. I just disappeared. One day I was there. And the next I wasn't. No classes. No messages. No stairwell meetings. No behind-the-door kisses I didn't want but didn't stop. I thought it would feel like freedom. But it didn't. Felt like waiting for the world to explode. I stayed at my aunt's for 3 days. She thought I was just visiting. My parents didn't ask questions. They liked when I took care of myself. I turned off my phone. Blocked his number. Didn't open the curtains. Didn't eat. Didn't sleep. Just waited. Because I knew this was an escape. Not really. This was just the pause before the detonation. It happened the moment I stepped back onto school grounds. Friday. Late morning. I'd missed 2 days. Hallways were half empty. He found me before I even made it to my locker. His hand hit the metal next to my head, bang, and then he was there. Faster than I remembered. Bigger than he'd ever felt before. His face was storm dark. His breath sharp. Eyes wild. You fucking ran. My heart didn't skip. It stopped. I needed space, I said. Wrong answer. His hand grabbed my arm and shoved me through the nearest door. Storage room, dark and silent, bleach and dust in the air. He kicked it shut, locked it, then turned to me. You don't disappear on me. I backed up. He followed. Do you know what that did to me? Do you have any idea what went through my head when you stopped answering? His voice cracked. I couldn't. Bullshit, you chose to leave. He snapped. I had to. No, you didn't. He grabbed my shirt, slammed me against the shelves. I gasped. Metal dug into my spine. Then his hand at my throat. Again. Not playful. Not possessive. Desperate. Your mind, say it. He hissed. I shook my head. Wrong move. His grip tightened. I said say it. My voice came out broken. I can't breathe. He didn't stop. Not right away. Just stared at me like I was the only thing keeping him alive. And maybe I was. Then suddenly release. Air flooded back into my lungs. I coughed hard. Fell to my knees. Riven backed away, stumbling like he couldn't breathe now. He ran a hand through his hair, fingers shaking. Then he did something I didn't expect. He dropped to the floor in front of me and cried. Not loud, not messy, just silent tears. One after another, like they'd been waiting a long time. I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to fucking be without you, he whispered. I stared at him, face in his hands, shoulders hunched, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. And I hated him. God, I hated him. But more than that, I wanted to hold him, and that scared me more than everything else. I reached out. My fingers brushed his shoulder. He looked up, eyes bloodshot, wet, and he said it again. I don't know how to live without you. Neither did I, so I stayed. Chapter 15. Bound silence. We went back to school like nothing happened. No one said a word. No one asked where I'd been or why I looked thinner, or why Riven started walking me to class with one hand always somewhere on me, shoulder, wrist, the small of my back. Possessive, protective, permanent. I wore long sleeves even when it was hot. I told people I was cold-natured. I told myself it was safer. Sometimes I still felt his hands on my throat when I was alone. Not hard, just memory deep. Sometimes I'd look in the mirror and wonder if I existed before him, or if he built me from bruises. Liam, you still mine? He said one morning, standing too close in the hallway. I didn't look up. I just nodded, because the lie was easier than the truth. And the truth was yes, not because he earned me, but because he broke me into something that fit him. We stopped talking as much. There was nothing left to say. He didn't ask how I felt. I didn't offer. Our conversations were looks, touches, commands, silences. That was our language now. In class, I still got perfect scores. My pencil still moved like muscle memory. My face still smiled when it needed to. But there was no one inside. Only flickers. Only him. Once, my counselor asked if I was okay. I said, yeah. She smiled. Glad to hear it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her hand and say, please look closer. But I didn't. Because if someone saw me, really saw me, they'd see what I let happen. And I couldn't afford that. At lunch, we sat side by side. Close, quiet. He fed me a grape off his fork. I let him. That's what we were now. Polite enough to pass. Toxic enough to rot. But balanced. And no one could see the cracks. That afternoon, in the stairwell where it started, he kissed me. Just once. Soft, for once. His hand in my hair. My hand on his chest. We didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. We just stood there. Two people locked in something too quiet to be love and too brutal to be anything else. And when he whispered, "Don't leave again," I didn't answer, because he already knew I wouldn't.